All right, so here's what we're crafting in the Just Stamp studio today. It is a pop-up slider featuring the wrapped bouquet bundle. So it doesn't look like a special card until you add the interactivity. And look at this, isn't this cool? I'm gonna pull and it reveals a little message at the top. Love you bunches. And then when we mail it or gift it, we just slide down and there you go. Super sweet. It is for you. It's the wrapped bouquet bundle from the January to June mini. Here we go again. Love you bunches. And I'm going to show you how to make this interactive card in just 10 easy steps. So let's get started. As I mentioned, I am using the wrapped bouquet stamp set. It has actually two beautiful images that pay homage to the tradition of selling flowers and wrapping them in newspaper. So we have some really fun floral images. We have two. We have a background newspaper image and some sentiments, which are always nice. A stamp set with sentiments and images is just the kind for me. It's got a Happy Mother's Day, Love You bunches that we used on this slide, and Thank You Friend, as well as For You. So the nice thing about this stamp set, it does have the coordinating dies called wrapped flowers. You can see, I'll flip it over. It has some outline dies, and then it's got some extra dies that you can cut some extra foliage, plus a sweet little tag. And again, the dies are on sale. They are half price. They're normally $31, on sale for just $15.50. So if you like both, you want to purchase them separately. Normally you can purchase a bundle and save a little bit, but this time with the retirement list, you'll do better off ordering them separately. So that is the bundle that we're working with. I'll give you the supplies I'm using as well. I am using the basic white thick cardstock. It measures 5.5 by 8.5, and it's been scored at 4 1/4. And I will add, again, this is the thick cardstock. You want to have a nice rigid card base to go along with your card making. The lighter weight basic white is perfect for stamping on, but it's not great as a card base. The next piece we're going to need, again, this is thick basic white. You will need a nice rigid pull card in here, and this is what I'm talking about. You want to make sure that it is the thick cardstock so that you have a little bit more stability. This basic white piece measures 2 7/8 by 4 3/4. All right. Continuing, we do need a basic white piece. This is the lighter weight. This is going to be used for layering, and it's actually going to be on the outside of our card. So this is the lighter weight basic white. This one measures 2 3/8 by 3 1/2. So that's that piece that we have. We're also going to need a piece of Smoky Slate cardstock. This measures 3 7/8 by 5 1/2. So 3 7/8 by 5 1/2. We need a piece of sheer ribbon. It's going to be about 12 inches. That's for the decorating. We're going to need a little piece of twine. This one happens to be because the decoration I chose has a small tag. So this is about 8 inches of twine. And I have cut some some foliage from the dies in soft succulent. So this is a really pretty color. It is an in color, and it's coordinating with the fresh freesia that I'm using on the stamped image and also on the ribbon. So I have gone ahead and stamped and colored my image. This is what I'm going to be decorating with, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we decorate. So here are our pieces we're going to need. We're going to go ahead and get started creating our pop-up slider card. 10 easy steps. So I'm going to walk you through it. It should make sense for you. If you need to catch the replay on this, I will have the snipped edited version over on the YouTube channel. So let's start with our Smoky Slate cardstock. We are going to need the paper trimmer. So I love Stampin' Up's paper trimmer. It's got both the scoring blade and the cutting blade. Scoring blade is the light gray, cutting blade is the darker gray, plus I've got all my measurements up at the top and down the side, and if I needed to, for a larger piece of paper, I could extend the arm out and get a full 17 inches width. I don't need it on this project. So for this project, I'm going to start off by cutting. So once again, for cutting, we need the dark blade. So step number one is to cut this Smoky Slate cardstock, and we're going to cut it on 3 sides only, the 2 longer sides and 1 of the shorter sides, and we are going to be cutting at 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to push my cardstock over to 3/4 of an inch on the right, and I'm going to cut starting at 3/4 down, and I'm going to continue that all the way down to 4 3/4, which is going to give me about 3/4 of a border at the bottom as well. So I'm going to start my blade up at 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to look to the side here for my measurements. One more tip, I do like to read the numbers on the side ruler a little bit easier, so I have placed a 1/4 inch snip of basic white paper on there. It helps the black numbers pop a little bit better. So again, 3/4 of an inch, I'm going to start 3/4 of an inch down, so I'm going to move that blade down to 3/4. So not starting at the top, 3/4 down, and I'm going to come down all the way to 4 3/4. So I'm going to stop right down here. I'm going to push down with the cutting blade and cut carefully, stopping at 4 3/4. So side one is done. I'm going to now rotate 180 degrees and do the same on the other side. So I'm going to push over to 3/4 of an inch on the right, and I'm going to start, this time I'm just going to start right where I left off, which happens to be at 3/4 of an inch from the base of the cardstock, and I'm going to cut all the way up to 3/4 of an inch at the top. All right, so what I've got going on so far is just 2 cuts. I've got one on the left, one on the right. I am going to be cutting now the bottom at 3/4 of an inch. So if you happen to pick a pattern or some stamping that has orientation on it, you're going to want to make sure that you're cutting the bottom. In my case, it doesn't matter if I cut this side or this side, it's simply a solid piece of Smoky Slate. I'm going to put it up at the top, push it over to 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to cut between the 2 cuts, which happen to be 3/4 of an inch. So I'm trying to make sure I've cut that down. And so in essence, look what I've got. I've got a flap here. So I'm done with the cutting on this. Now I'm going to push that cutting blade aside, and I'm going to do some scoring. I am going to start by scoring at 3/4 of an inch at the top and only between the 2 cuts. So I'm going to rotate that, push it up to 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to score between this cut and the bottom cut. So I'm going to go ahead and close my arm. I'm going to bring it down to 3/4 of an inch and score down to the cut line. So I've got a score in there now. I'm going to lift the arm. Now I'm going to push this cardstock over to 2.5, and I'm going to score again, but only the flap. So I'm going to start once again at 3/4 of an inch and bring it down to about, it looks like it's 3 1/8, right to the end of that score, sorry, that cut line. So there I've scored at 2.5. I have one more score I need to do. I'm going to push it up to 4 1/4. So there we go right there. And again, I'm only scoring the flap. So right now we are just on, let's see, we're already at step 2. There's only 10 steps to creating this pop-up slider card. It's pretty easy. I'm going to walk you through each step. So now I'm done with the trimmer for the time being. I'm going to push it aside, go back to the Smoky Slate cardstock, and now that we have cut, we are going to, let's see, oh, I got rid of that just a little too soon. I'm going to trim this down, and I am going to trim it from 5.5 down to 5 1/4, except that I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch from the top and 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. Now you might wonder why I just didn't start off with a smaller piece. I'm just thinking in my head when I'm scoring that 3/4 inch measurement is a lot easier to remember than the 1/8 measurements. In fact, a lot of crafters kind of push away from these smaller measurements. So I just went ahead and kept it easy at 5.5, but now I'm going to trim off just 1/8 of an inch from the top and the bottom. And I am trimming, so I need that cutting blade. Just going to slice off 1/8 of an inch at the bottom, and then I'm going to flip it, rotate it 180 degrees, and trim off again 1/8 of an inch. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and push this aside. There's my Smoky Slate. We are going to now burnish. So I'm going to lift this flap. I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to burnish this by folding it up. I'm going to burnish it down with my bone folder. And then next, I'm going to fold this right at the score line. I'm going to fold it in half. So just folding it down and burnish. And then I'm going to fold this 1/2 inch tab up. So I've created a Z fold, or I've created a mountain is what's going on here. So here we go. I've got all scores burnished. So now we are going to carry on. We will be on step 5. Remember, there's only 10 steps to this. I'm going to bring in a 1-inch circle punch. So hopefully you have that in your craft kit. And what I'm doing, I'm rotating. I want to be at the top of this layer, which happens to be right here opposite the cut. So I'm going to rotate it, bring in my 1/2 inch punch, and I'm going to push in halfway. And I'm going to try and center this right between the Smoky Slate cardstock. So I'm going to eyeball, I'm not going to measure. And I'm going in about halfway on the circle. I want an equal amount on the left, an equal amount on the right. Just going to punch that out. And now I have a little notch. This is going to create the little gap so that I can pull my card up and down. So there, I've done my punching. Next, I'm ready to apply some adhesive. By the way, this is already step number 6, so it's going really fast. It's pretty easy. I'm going to apply adhesive on this Smoky Slate layer, so I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to bring in my adhesive, which in this case is going to be tear and tape. We need a nice aggressive adhesive. Tear and tape works perfectly, and I'm going to start by applying adhesive to that 1/2 inch flap at the bottom of my sliding mechanism. So I'm just going to attach that, and let's see, I'm going to bring in my little tool to cut or trim that off. All right, so what I've done is applied a little bit of adhesive on that flap. Now I'm also going to put adhesive on the sides and at the bottom. I'm going to want to adhere this to my card base using a strong aggressive adhesive. So on both long sides, again, I'm applying adhesive. And this is one of my favorite interactive cards. I've made this on different occasions, different themes. It's fairly simple to create, but it really adds a wow factor to your greeting card. So there we go. And you will notice I am putting the adhesive as far up to the edge of the cardstock. That's because I'm going to want to clear my sliding card. So then I also need to put it at the bottom here. So one last strip of adhesive here. All right, and I am ready to go. All right, so this layer is ready, and you'll notice that I'm pressing down. That helps to remove the sticky back, or that layer off of the sticky tear and tape a little bit easier. So I've got adhesive here. The next thing I'm gonna do is bring in that basic white cutting, and this piece happens to measure, I'm just gonna remind you, it measures 2 7/8 by 4 3/4, and this is the thick cardstock. It's the heavier cardstock. I'm gonna add a little punch, a little hole up here at the top, and I'm using my detailed trio punch. I'm gonna use that little punch right there. So I'm just gonna insert this. It's gonna go as close to the middle as I can, punch down, and here's what I've got now. So I just created that little hole there. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is attach this to my smoky slate layer by revealing the tear and tape here at the bottom of the sliding mechanism. So I wanna be at this base here. I'm gonna go ahead and reveal that. I'm gonna bring in my Pick-a tool to help pull off that backing. So here we go. This is, by the way, step number 8, so we're almost there. What I'm gonna do now is adhere this. I'm gonna align the base of this card to the base of this cut flap. So I'm gonna center it. So it's gonna be aligned at the base here, but it's gonna be centered as well. So this card is about 1/2 inch bigger than this flap. So we want a little bit on each side. And what I'm doing is just trying to balance out that card so that I have 1/2 on each side. And then I'm just gonna burnish down. All right, so I've got the card attached to the smoky slate. When you turn it over, you can see it peeks out a tiny bit at the top. That's perfect, that's what we want it to do. And in order for it to slide, watch what happens. I've got that mountain going on. So already our mechanism's pretty much finished. We have our slide and we have the pop-up. What we're gonna do next is adhere this to our card base layer. And if you remember, we have a basic white thick cardstock. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this and burnish it. And then as a reminder, when I score, I have 2 different kinds of score lines. I have one that's debossed and one that is embossed. So I have that mountain and I have the valley. I want to have that mountain to the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and fold, mountains on the inside, and use my bone folder to burnish that down so I get a crisp fold. And it is a side flap, so I'm going to be opening this way. The next thing I'm going to do is adhere this to the card base. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. I'm going to reveal the tear and tape. Use my Pick-a tool to take that off. And next one, right through here. Now I'm going to bring in my card base and I am going to hold this layer from the top to try and make it rigid. I'm going to bring in the card base, or sorry, the layer onto the card base. There's going to be just slightly under a 1/8 inch border at the bottom, and there should be about a 1/4 inch border on both sides. So here we go. We are nearly done with this pop and slide card. And there we go. Okay, so watch what happens now. I'm gonna pull the card, bring it up, and watch that pop and slide. So cool, I love it. Okay, so now, step 10, decorate. So here we go. I happen to like that wrapped bouquet. That's what I'm going with today. And I'm gonna put a small basic white layer on here to kind of cover up that sliding mechanism. And I'm gonna decorate it with just a little black and white, very basic. So these little scraps came from a package of pattern paper called True Love. It happens to be in the January to June mini catalog, so it is going to be going away. I love the basic white, and I like just the small pattern. It's nothing overpowering. I am going to take a 2 7/8 inch scrap, and I am going to attach it to this 1/2 inch tab down here at the bottom. So that's going to be attached there. I'm just going to put some adhesive, and I'm going to go ahead and use my favorite, which is Tombow liquid glue. It's very forgiving, so if you don't land in the right spot immediately, you have a little bit of time to push it over wherever you want. So there we go. That's going on that 1/2 inch flap. There we go. Now the next thing is I have a slightly smaller scrap. This one's same measurement across, 2 7/8. This one just happens to be 2 1/4. And I am going to put this at the top of my basic white. Now the basic white, this is the piece that measures 2 3/8 by 3 1/2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of Tombow on the back. And this, remember, goes right up at the top. Just adds a little bit of pop of black, which makes it a little bit more dramatic. There we go. So next, I am going to, now this is going to go right on here. That's how it's going to work out. Let's see. And I have a feeling, there we go. I have my wrapped bouquet. So this is the image from the wrapped bouquet bundle. I went ahead and pre-stamped it. I colored it in with Stampin' Blend. So I used the fresh freesia for the flowers, and I used the soft succulent for the leaves. And then I die cut it. So easy to decorate. And while I was at it, I went ahead and cut some of the little leaf branches, and these are going to be added to the background of the flowers. So what I'm doing, I am going to go ahead and attach this here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some adhesive, and it's just flat adhesive, wanting that stripe up at the top. So here we go. We're going to abut it to that 1/4 inch, sorry, that 1/2 inch tab at the bottom, right like so. There we go. And so now I know that I'm going to want this image here to clear. I don't want to bring it over below that white. I need it up at the bottom of that white, and I am going to want this to pop up. So I'm going to add some Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to put one at the base of the flowers and maybe a couple further up. And I'm not going to adhere it yet. I'm going to place my little branches to kind of make sure that they are peeking out from where I want them to peek. And again, I'm going to use little tiny dots of liquid glue, being careful not to put any glue on the upper leaves because they might be off the rectangle, and I don't want it to stick down. I want that sliding mechanism to be free. So I'm going to want this to peek out here, and this is why I haven't put that wrapped bouquet down securely yet. Now I want another branch off to the side. Let's see, I'm going to pick this one here. It's a little bit heavier, more foliage, and I'm going to again put some little dots of liquid glue. And I'm going to want this one to peek out from the left. So again, I'm going to lift that up, pop that up around there. And I want a couple coming out at the top. So let's put another little spray. And again, just at the bottom. I don't want them sticking out and being sticky. So just going to add some there. And I have one more little branch. I'm going to add again a couple little dots. And I'm going to stick it right over here to the left so that it's poking out there. So there's my nice little floral arrangement. And not ready to secure that down yet. Here's what I'm doing. I'm taking a little tag that says for you. So this was stamped with one of the images in the stamp set and cut with the little tag die that happens to be in that set of dies. And this is going to be popped up. So I'm going to add a little dimensional at the back. And I also want to add some twine. So the twine I happen to be using today, it is the Baker's Twine Essentials pack from the main catalog. And what I like about it is it's got white, it's got very vanilla, it's got crumb cake, it's got black, so lots of colors to choose from. I choose white, and I'm just going to feed that through the little tag, and then I'm going to bring it around. Let's see if I can tie that into a little knot. You know, it might be easier to manage if I stick it down. So now I'm ready to stick it down, and I might even be able to, yeah, I've got a dimensional right in place. So I'm going to put the twine right on that sticky dimensional. That's going to help my twine behave while I'm tying. And I'm going to bring this in. Remember, I do not want this falling below the white. I want it right up here. I want to see my green foliage popping out. Right like so. Now I'm ready to just tie a knot here at the end. Secure the little tag. And I'm just going to tie a knot. I don't really want a bow. Just a knot. Bringing that around. There we go. And so now I'm going to go ahead and secure the tag down. Flip that over, and let's see if I can clear. There we go. And I'm going to snip those ends. I'm going to bring in my ribbon scissors so that it doesn't chew the twine. There we go. All right, almost done. I do want to add a tiny bit of a shadow here just to kind of ground that bouquet of flowers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Smoky Slate blender, and I'm just going to come in to this side right here. Add a little bit of gray, but I'm going to want it to be really subtle. So just a little tiny bit of gray here. And to kind of erase that a tiny, tiny bit, I'm going to bring in the color lifter and just blend it in so it's kind of shadowy. Kind of grounds my bouquet onto my white paper. And a couple last steps for decorating. I'm going to take my fresh freesia sheer ribbon, and I'm going to put it on the card. Whoops. Oh, you know what I did? Yikes! I led you astray. I only wanted to attach the bottom. So what I'm saying is I put adhesive all the way to the top. We don't want to adhere the top of the card, only the half. So it would flow like this. Now let's see if I can fix that. I'm going to lift that off, and I think it's going to be okay. There we go. That is the beauty of Tombow liquid glue. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my ribbon through, just like so. And what I want to do is knot it. So make sure when you attach your decoration that you only attach to the bottom half of the little slide, half of the mountain. So I've got it knotted through. Now I'm just going to make my loops and make a bow. And sometimes it wants to be the boss, so. And let me try again. Okay, so let's go with the loop and wrap. I'm going to have a nice big loop here in the middle so I can feed it through. That needs to go through the center. All right, so now I can go ahead and pull these and tighten it. There we go. Now that's going to be slipped right through, and I am going to snip the ends of that ribbon with my ribbon scissors again. So just so it's a little tiny bit shorter. That was about 12 inches, and I like to have a little extra as opposed to having not enough. There we go. So we're going to trim that up. We're nearly done. We just need to add a little bit of pop to it. We're going to go ahead and take our Wink of Stella, and we're going to apply to the flowers first. And I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this on camera. It gives a nice shimmer to the flowers. So I'm going to do all 3 flowers. One last flower, and then I'm just going to add a couple of touches to that green foliage, just to add a little bit of sparkle up at the tips, make the leaves look a little bit wet. And we have just one more step. We need that pop of pizzazz. So there we go. There's our pop-up slider. I want to add a little pizzazz to that. I'm going to come in with my matte black dots. These are my favorites of the day. And I'm going to take one bigger one. So I have one cut already there. I'm going to use my pick a tool, and I'm going to put one down at the bottom, and I'm going to create a little triangle. So I'll bring one up, it's kind of like so, and one final one up towards the top. And there is our pop-up slider card. We have one last thing to do. Let's put our message on the inside. So here we go. When I pull this open, it pops up, and I'm going to want to stamp right on here. So another option might be to actually place a little gift card here. So that would be doable, but I'm just going to stamp it, and I'm going to stamp it with a stamp that says "Love You Bunches." So let me pull that out. And there we go. And I'm going to need an acrylic block. All right, so now I'm just going to add my sentiment to the inside of the slide. I'm going to use my block, and I am stamping in Smoky Slate, and I'm remembering to tap tap, not to smush, and I'm going to put it up towards the top. So you could write a little message here, but you're also going to have space on the inside of the card. So let's go ahead and slide that down. You also have space on the inside to write your note, or you could stamp a bigger greeting, maybe happy birthday or thinking of you on the inside. And you have your pop-up slide card in 10 easy steps. There we go. Let me know what you think. If you have any comments, please post them here. I know I didn't check the comments as I was working, but I love to read your comments, and I will respond. If you liked today's tutorial, you can follow me 3 different ways. First of all, follow this page so that you get the Friday Facebook Lives every week. You can also click over to my YouTube channel, which is just Stamp with Anna Marie. Be sure and subscribe. There are many tutorials there. And then one last thing, you will want to get on my email list so that you know when I do classes, when there are promotions, or just for additional tutorials and tips. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you soon.